I started going through this week, and obviously last week was a big week for the podcast. I put out a lot of content in a very short amount of time. Last video I recorded was prior Friday, so I believe that was the 18th of March. And then I obviously record usually on Mondays, and so I said last week, kind of jumping the gun, I said I hope to be able to get things back to normal this week, or this upcoming week, I should say. And then I kind of realized halfway through Saturday that means that I will have to, come up with another podcast in 2 days and, put it all together and record it in that short amount of time, on top of already having to put out, about 4 hours of content the prior week. And I just kind of thought, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to do that. And so then I had a perfect thought. This would be the perfect opportunity for me to do another mock draft for the upcoming NFL draft in April. So that is what I will be doing today. But before I get to that, there are a couple more big signings in the world of Major League Baseball that I wanted to talk about, and also a couple in the NFL as well. I'll start with the NFL. Juju Smith-Schuster, former wide receiver of the Pittsburgh Steelers, signed a one-year contract with the Kansas City Chiefs. Obviously, Kansas City Chiefs offense is already dangerous enough. Adding Juju Smith-Schuster to that mix, that is another great piece for their offense. Certainly, I think that he has been undervalued over the last couple of years, not necessarily by the Steelers. I just think that by the public, one, because of his attitude issues, obviously the famous incident of him recording everything in the Pittsburgh Steelers locker room, and then obviously injuries as well. He was out for most of the year last year with injuries. It's played a really big part in him not really getting a big long-term contract, despite being a very young and productive wide receiver, which usually, those guys, they go like hotcakes, those kinds of wide receivers. But obviously, not Juju, but he does have a nice prove-it deal, $10 million with the Chiefs, and obviously not very many better teams that you can go to than the Chiefs. Arguably still the best team in the NFL, even with the departures that they've had over the last couple of seasons. So awesome, good for the Chiefs, good for Juju. I think that obviously it's great that he's not going to a place where he feels like he has to be the guy. They obviously have a ton of weapons that have been there for a while. Mecole Hardman, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce. So just to name a few. So certainly a good signing for them. Don't anticipate him really signing any kind of long-term contract with them. I just don't think that even if he does prove himself to be worth a long-term extension, they just probably won't be able to sign him with all the big contracts that they already have on the books with the guys that I mentioned previously in Tyreek Hill, and then obviously Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, a bunch of the offensive linemen that they have some pretty decent contracts as well. Some of their defenders have pretty decent contracts. So obviously it doesn't appear to me like he's going to be signing any kind of long-term contract with them. But I suppose you never know. We've seen it in the past. Obviously, other news, Allen Robinson, great wide receiver for the Chicago Bears the last few years, has signed with the Los Angeles Rams on a 3-year contract. A very dangerous wide receiver and a very, very good one. And with that, the Rams also traded Robert Woods, a very good wide receiver in and of himself, to the Tennessee Titans. In a move that kind of basically corresponds with the Allen Robinson move. Obviously, Allen Robinson was essentially replacing Woods on the roster. Woods started falling out of favor this year with the Rams, and I'm not sure that's necessarily fair. Obviously, he was injured this year, but he's still a fantastic wide receiver, and I truly hope that, we don't forget that. A good signing in terms of the Allen Robinson signing for the Rams, but also great pickup for the Titans. They certainly need some firepower after they released Julio Jones. A.J. Brown can't do it all by himself. And they also signed Austin Hooper, former tight end for the Cleveland Browns. The Titans adding a little bit on offense, certainly. Not sure how much that's going to help, but we will see. And now on to the MLB. The other moves for the NFL, by the way, that happened today and in the previous days, I will be saving for the NFL mock draft, because obviously we'll have to do with the mock draft. So, moving on to the MLB, a few pretty big moves over the last couple of days. The Philadelphia Phillies signing Nick Castellanos, the Minnesota Twins signing Carlos Correa, and of course, my favorite of the three, the Boston Red Sox signing Trevor Story. I'll start with Nick Castellanos. This move surprised me, and I feel like it surprised a few of my friends as well. I talked to some Phillies fans that I know, and they were pretty surprised with this move. It wouldn't have been nearly as surprising at the beginning of the offseason, but certainly I think that the signing of Kyle Schwarber, who projected to already be the designated hitter for the Philadelphia Phillies, kind of made the Nick Castellanos signing a little bit odd, because neither Schwarber nor Castellanos is particularly adept at playing the field. Kyle Schwarber obviously played first base for the Red Sox at the end of last season, but obviously Rhys Hoskins has that position locked down. Although obviously if Kyle Schwarber wanted to, he probably could play there on days that Rhys Hoskins has off. And obviously Rhys Hoskins has had some injury issues in the past, so that's not out of the question, I'm sure. And Nick Castellanos, obviously he's played right field for most of his career. And you know, he's fine. He doesn't have particular break-end speed. He doesn't have a crazy good arm. He doesn't have that great a glove. So, you know, he's definitely a below-average outfielder in terms of his fielding ability. But his bat is absolutely potent. I mean, for the Reds last year, he absolutely tore it up. Him and Jesse Winker both ended up starting in the All-Star game for the Reds last year, and now both of them are gone. So, sorry to all my Reds fans out there. But yeah, back to Castellanos signing with the Phillies. It did kind of, again, it was a little strange, because now obviously, you know, one of the two of Schwarber or Castellanos is, you know, they're going to have to play the field. And I'm assuming that they are not going to be a platoon at DH, because if that is a platoon, then you meaning the Phillies, spent way too much money on a DH platoon. So I'm guessing that one of them is going to probably play left field. If I had to pick one, I suppose I would say Schwarber. I think that he's proven in the past that he can, you know, his bat is a little bit better when he plays the field than Castellanos' bat was, especially when he was in Detroit. Castellanos had a great bat, but I just think Schwarber may be a little bit better in the field. I think he's a little bit more athletic and a little bit more capable out there. Now, not to say that Castellanos isn't, and I certainly could see Castellanos being the one that plays left, and Schwarber's numbers certainly were better when he was a designated hitter, but I'm going to guess that Schwarber's probably going to be the one that's out there in left field and not Castellanos, but obviously it could go the other way around, no problem, but we will see what happens. And another pretty surprising move this offseason in what has been a free agency of a few pretty reasonably interesting and not to be expected moves was Carlos Correa, prized shortstop coming out of the Astros system, signing with the Minnesota Twins on a 3-year, over $100 million contract. So he's certainly getting compensated well, and what's good about that contract for Correa is that, you know, he can go over there and you know, he can basically be the face of that team, and a great middle infield pairing with Jorge Polanco, who had a fantastic year last year. So Correa can really be the face of that franchise, get paid $30+ million every year, and then hit free agency again when he's, I think, 29. I think he's 26 right now. So about 29, 30, 28, whatever that math ends up becoming, but somewhere around there. So he'll be able to hit free agency once again and maybe be able to capitalize on another big contract should he perform well and should his game age well. Obviously, he won his first Gold Glove last year, was certainly in the running for Platinum Glove as well. He was one of the best defenders in baseball last year, for sure, and he obviously had a great offensive year as well, and he actually managed to mostly stay healthy, which has been a concern for Correa for most of his career as well. And if he can keep that up, he's certainly going to live up to his contract, even though it is pretty hefty one in terms of the annual average salary. Great signing for the Twins. I love it for them. It is a little confusing for Correa in terms of the situation that he'll be in. The Twins certainly are not going to be in contention this year, barring any kind of just craziness in that division. Their pitching staff has really taken a hit over the last couple of years, especially with the decline of Kenta Maeda and the departure of Jose Barrios. They have some good hitters on that team, such as, Max Kepler, obviously Jorge Polanco, as I mentioned earlier. Now Gary Sanchez, who I still think when he plays, he's a pretty good bat, even though his average and on-base percentage is not all that great, but he's got some good pop. We will see. And then obviously Gio Urshela. But I still don't expect them to really be all that great in terms of a team. So it is a little strange. Maybe Correa, he's obviously, he's already won, a lot of awards over his time in Houston. He's won a World Series. He's won a Gold Glove. I think he may have even won MVP. I might be mistaken on that. It's been a while, but he might have also won an MVP. I don't remember. I might be completely losing my mind on that. But nonetheless, he's certainly, he's had a great career already, and he's got his bag. He's making a lot of money, so good for him, and great for the Twins. They get one of the best young shortstops in baseball. I'm never going to hate on a move like that. And then now my favorite move of the offseason, obviously for many reasons. The Boston Red Sox signing Trevor Story to a 6-year, $140 million deal. Some of the contract details were a little bit wonky. I've never seen something like this in a contract, at least not to my memory. He does have an opt-out after 4 years of the contract. However, the Red Sox can also, I don't know what the terminology is, but it's like, negate out that buyout, really. I don't know how the terminology is exactly, but they can basically cancel the buyout by adding another year onto the deal for $20 million, making it a $160 million contract. Interesting contract for sure. But about Trevor Story, I think a lot of people have forgotten just how good of a player Trevor Story is, and maybe not necessarily forgotten that he's a great player, but he had some injuries last year. His production definitely took a dip last year from what it normally was, and a lot of people are saying that this is not a great signing for the Red Sox because, one, they are quote-unquote rebuilding, they're not necessarily rebuilding in terms of like they're, getting rid of all their stars and building through the draft, but Shane Bloom certainly has reinstated a lot of great habits in terms of the minor league system for the Red Sox and in terms of, how they're going to be developing guys. We obviously have some pretty decent prospects now, when a couple of years ago we had barely anything in terms of prospects because they had all come up and are all playing major roles at the same time for the Red Sox. And now we have at least a somewhat okay foundation of getting some good prospects in there. So we will see how that develops, but certainly one of the reasons that they say it's a bad move is because the Red Sox are rebuilding. Another is because we already have a fantastic shortstop at Xander Bogaerts, and, we didn't necessarily need Trevor Story because Xander Bogaerts already provides all the production that the Red Sox need at that position. Certainly a valid argument, however, obviously a great athlete like Story and a great athlete like Xander would certainly be able to move positions should they need it. Honestly, if it was up to me, I would have Xander Bogaerts move to third base. I'd have Rafael Devers play first base, and I would have Trevor Story play, shortstop, and then eventually, call up one of our stud prospects like a Marcelo Meyer, like a Jeter Downs, to play second base. Or Nick York, obviously. That certainly seems to be a possibility, but we will kind of see how that plays out. But obviously, that's another one of the reasons why people say it's a bad move for the Red Sox. And another one, and this is my least favorite one of all, is that Trevor Story can't play on the road. Anybody who looks at his home road splits, and they might not necessarily know enough about Coors Field, they might say Trevor Story is going to be terrible in a Red Sox uniform because he's absolutely horrible on the road as compared to when he hits in Coors Field. He's only good because he hits 80 games in Coors Field, and so he's going to take a huge step back when he goes to Fenway for 80 games. I have two things to say to that. One, yes, Coors Field has obviously a hitter's advantage. The air is thinner up there, balls fly a little bit more, ball's a little bit lighter. We all understand that. That is not a dispute. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to prove that that's incorrect. But what I am saying is that in terms of, OPS, average OPS for hitters, in terms of, average for a ballpark, Coors is number one, but Fenway, I believe, unless I am completely mistaken and I misread that, is number two. So certainly it is not as if the Red Sox and Fenway Park do not have their own advantages. Obviously, Trevor Story is very, very good at hitting the ball into right field, hitting it into those gaps, those big, large gaps in Fenway Park. And then obviously you have the green monster in left field. So he'll be able to pull the ball a little bit more and be able to play with that monster a little bit. And so certainly that will probably help him out as well. So that is the first thing I had to say. And the second thing is, here's the thing about Coors Field. So it's not just an advantage for when you go there, is Coors Field. However, it is also a disadvantage for when you leave there if you are playing there. Now, in terms of players who have, played their whole career at Coors Field and then left, such as a Nolan Arenado, I honestly haven't really seen a lot of evidence to say that, a person who stays a really long time in Coors goes to another team and absolutely stinks. Obviously, Nolan Arenado did not do that with the Cardinals. His average was down a little bit, but his power was still there. His gap-to-gap power was still there. He still had a ton of RBIs. So, I don't think it would be fair to say at all that Nolan Arenado took a step back in terms of his production. I certainly don't think he did. But what it does do, it being Coors Field, is when you do play there for 80 games, and during that season that you're playing there, you go on the road, it's a little bit more difficult to adjust to different styles of pitching, different ball flight, obviously different air conditions in terms of, sometimes you're playing indoors, sometimes you're playing outdoors, sometimes you're playing, like say you're playing the Arizona Diamondbacks in a stadium that has a humidifier, which is exactly the opposite of what is Coors Field, which is basically the anti-humidifier. A humidifier is meant to put moisture in the air to make balls not fly as far, and obviously Coors Field has very thin air, so it makes balls fly farther. So, there's a lot of reasons that you can say that this isn't a great signing for the Red Sox. I don't listen to that noise because, quite frankly, I don't think any of the arguments make that much sense or really stick. Obviously, Trevor Story has said that he's going to play second base this year, which I was a little surprised because I think just about a month ago he said he did not want to switch positions. But now, obviously, he's signed with the Red Sox and he's going to play second base this year. But what does concern me, I will say, is Xander Bogaerts does have an opt-out after the 2022 season. So I'm a little concerned that he's going to actually do that. And now I do think that he's going to opt out no matter what. I think that was pretty much a guarantee. My real concern is obviously that he won't come back. Because if Trevor Story is there at shortstop, Xander Bogaerts isn't going to want to move positions unless he absolutely has to. Again, if I had my way, Xander would be playing third. Where, obviously his range, his lack of elite range at shortstop's not going to hurt him. And then move Rafael Devers to first, which Rafael Devers, I love the guy. He is such a fantastic baseball player, but he's one of the worst defending third basemen in the league, and I don't think that's really an argument. So, putting him at first, I think, would negate that. And then obviously that would negate our first baseman problem that we've had over the last couple of years when all we've had is Mitch Moreland and Bobby Dahlbeck. Over there, basically. And then obviously Kyle Schwarber a little bit last year at the end. But, other than that, really it's just been, horribly average at first base, maybe even below average for most of the time in terms of offensive production. So I definitely think that Rafael Devers would completely change that. But that doesn't seem like it's going to happen, at least not right now. So my concern is that Xander will leave. And that would obviously be really, really crappy. Xander Bogaerts has had a fantastic career with the Red Sox. And obviously he's been one of the, if not the best, consistently hitting shortstops offensively in the league over the last 3 or 4 years. Obviously some guys have had better seasons, but I think consistently staying healthy, putting up great offensive numbers. Xander Bogaerts is right up there at the top. So, it would be sad to see him leave. It'd be sad to see him go, but obviously if that's what had to happen, at the very least you have a fantastic replacement in Trevor Story. You could call up, again, like I said, a Jeter Downs or a Nick York, somebody like that. I don't think Meyer's going to be ready by next year, but you never know. He could tear it up this year. You never really know. Obviously, I think it's a great move, especially for this year. It certainly gives our lineup some depth and some firepower that we didn't really have before. We've had some issues at the second base position for the last, bunch of years because obviously, Dustin Pedroia filled that hole for many, many years. And obviously when he went down with injury a few years ago and ended up having to retire, second base was kind of in flux for the Red Sox, and it has been. But now, at least for this season, we're going to have a fantastic second baseman. Now, obviously, that's assuming that Trevor Story's game can translate over to second base, but he's fast. He's got a great glove. He's had a fantastic arm. Obviously, he had some arm injuries last year, so I think it's probably a good thing that he's going to play second base for a year. It's going to be shorter throws, less stress on your arm, probably less plays as well. Shortstop, I just feel like gets the ball hit to them a little bit more. Maybe not necessarily in MLB because obviously you have a good amount of lefty hitters as well that like to pull the ball, but I think that it will still definitely, regardless of that last part of less ground balls, I still think it'll be a lot less strain on his arm than shortstop, obviously. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I think it's a great signing for the Red Sox. I think certainly he gives you a great option offensively and defensively. He stole 20 bases last year. He's a guy that's certainly for the Red Sox with how aggressive Alex Cora is. He's a guy that can get 25 home runs and 25 stolen bases easily, I think, if he reaches his potential and stays healthy. So I think it's a great signing, and I really am looking forward to seeing Trevor Story in a Red Sox uniform because he plays in Colorado. He played in Colorado, obviously, for his whole career. So I didn't get to watch him a lot unless it was playoffs or unless I was just there was nothing really else on, and the Rockies were on TV. I could watch Trevor Story, but other than that, I didn't really get to watch a lot of him. But now I get to watch him a lot more. So I think that's a great privilege to have.
Hey guys, me again. Thank you so much for watching one of my clips from the Lopes Goes Last podcast. These clips are so much fun to do. I absolutely love making them, and I absolutely love doing them. And this podcast is my baby, so I really want this thing to grow, and I really want it to succeed. So if you did like what you see, please subscribe. Also hit that bell notification so you never miss any one of my episodes or one of my clips like this one. And please do also like and share these videos with your friends and your family so that we can make this thing grow as fast as possible. And I wanted to thank you again so much. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video and have a great rest of your day.